contributor and executive director of USA Strong. You know, Erin, as my former boss used to say, President Trump, where is Hunter? I think we found him in the Judge Jeanine docuseries. It is really scary, everything we learn about Hunter Biden and his nexus to his dad, his father, who apparently didn't talk to his son about his business dealings, except, oh wait, we have a voicemail that disproves that. Nevertheless, we learned this week that this investigation by the DOJ has reached a, quote, critical stage, and yet NBC, ABC, CBS, 0 minutes of coverage. It's astounding.
It really is astounding, and it's such a disparate treatment if these were the Trump kids, right? If you hear anything about President Trump's children, who are all, by the way, very successful,
right,
the media will be covering it wall to wall. But with Hunter, they just sort of give him a pass. And as we know, Joe Biden says Hunter is the smartest man I know. We have a lot to think about there. And by the way, children and parents, you know, our kids, you're a mom, I'm a mom, kids are a reflection of their parents. What does that say about our president?
Right, Hunter's the smartest man he knows. That is a really troubling statement. And what was interesting, just last question on Hunter, is Paul Begala of MSNBC said this week that this is a Republican fixation to no avail. Casey Hunt said she thinks that this is apolitical. Republicans are just going after him for that reason. I read those quotes because this is serious. There's a Delaware grand jury investigation, and yet the media is still blaming Republicans. And as you'll recall, during the election, there was a media blackout. There was a social media blackout. I hope we don't see this in 2024, a blackout of all scandals related to the nominee. But what do you think?
I think the American people deserve better than receiving just dribs and drabs of information that fits their narrative.
Yeah.
And as you said, there is a DOJ investigation here. This isn't just fodder. This isn't just gossip. We are worried about his dealings overseas and whether or not he has paid his taxes and if he used his father's position to garner influence. And it certainly looks like he has. So this isn't just a Republican narrative. Our country deserves to know what's going on.
Yeah. Speaking of the big guy, to make a transition here, which we know Tony Bobolinsky told us that President Joe Biden was the big guy back when he was VP. Speaking of him, Quinnipiac out this week with a devastating new poll, 31% approval. Okay, Quinnipiac, if you believe that, you believe that Governor DeSantis is not governor of Florida and it's actually this guy named Andrew Gillum by 8 points. So I say this to say, this poll leans so far left, but 31%. What's the reason for it?
Well, I think that Joe Biden is talking about pronouns and certain environmental issues, and while they are all important, we have people that can't afford to put gas in their car and can't afford to buy groceries for their children, and our southern border is open and people can't sleep at night worrying about these issues. We have a president that isn't listening to the American people. And by the way, as you were indicating, I think, you know, Quinnipiac isn't exactly conservative leaning, so if it's 31, it's probably 21.
Probably.
Right?
I mean, I've had thoughts like, is this guy going to get into the single digits? I mean, it's a sad reality of the state of our country. You mentioned the border, though, and interestingly, you know, the Hispanic Latino community, 19% approve of Biden, and we were told by the left, oh, the Republican rhetoric about the border is going to drive the Latino community away. In fact, we've seen the opposite.
Absolutely, and we see Mayra Flores right in that border community getting elected, and I think we're going to see a lot more of this because oftentimes our Latin communities here in the United States have conservative values, traditional values, family first, religion first, and we don't see that in this White House at all. It's almost like the family is disregarded, and in socialism, as you know, get rid of the family, then you can rely on the government, and it feels like that's what's happening here a little bit, and it's sad.
It does feel that way. I'm so glad you brought in Mayra Flores. You teed me up perfectly for this next question because Mayra Flores, you're right, so this is Texas's 34th district. Biden won this district by 13 points.
Wow.
Clinton by 33. And then Republican Mayra Flores wins it by 8. And it's not just her. There are 3 other women. Yesli Vega, Republican nominee out in Virginia. Casey Garcia, Monica De La Cruz. On Outnumbered, we call them the quad. So instead of the squad, you've got the quad. These Latino Republican women, young women who are just storming into our party with all the force, the power, the grit, and the bravery of Republican women. It's so nice to see that happening.
And it's not an aberration. Mayra Flores is not an aberration. She's a reflection of what's going on in our small communities and towns around the country. And the left really doesn't seem to want to pay this any mind, but they better wake up quickly because November is coming. By the grace of God, there's going to be a red wave.
Yeah, and I remember, speaking as 2 young women, when I was at the RNC, there were so few women in Congress that were Republican. And I was like, we need to up these numbers here. And it seems like it's happening organically. Moms, people who have been, in law enforcement, stepping up to the plate saying, yeah, I have a career, I have a job, I'm a stay-at-home mom, or I'm this or that, but I'm going to put my name out there for public service. And it's so nice to see Republican women being highlighted in this fashion, being elevated to the halls of Congress, really becoming a force.
I think it's happening on every level. I know in my local community with school board, a woman I know has 4 children, Angelique Contreras. She decided she was so fed up, she started homeschooling her kids, and then she said, you know what, I'm going to run for school board. These are young conservative women that just want better for their children and for their families. And I think it might have started with the pandemic. We were all listening to those Zoom calls and what our children were learning. The days of passive parenting are over. And when people say, hey, I want to get involved, start with your school board. Just see what you can do on any level, because it makes a huge difference with our children, our families, and our future.
I think you're exactly right. I was a young woman, always a conservative, but being a mom of 1, soon to be a 2, it just changes your outlook, changes your life, and really motivates your political views.
Absolutely.
Erin Elmore, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yes.
Congrats on the baby on the way.
Thank you so much. See you next time.